Aloha from Hawaii. My name is Gabe Morales, and today we have a guest who has a special skill set. I wish I knew about him when I worked at Folsom Prison back in the late 1980s, early 90s, when the Aryan Brotherhood was passing secret messages in rooms. If you don't know what those are, I'm sure he'll tell us about them. It is my pleasure to introduce David Schilling. How are you, sir?
Good, good. How are you?
All right, doing okay here.
Good, good.
All right, so David, tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in the center of the state of Minnesota, essentially, a small town called Belle Plaine, kind of by over Mankato area, sort of. Southern central part of the state. It's all country, farmland, and not a lot else around out there. A lot of cornfields, that type of thing.
Rural type environment. How far are you from Minneapolis?
Where I grew up was about 25 miles from Minneapolis, if you go straight west of there.
Okay, so you're pretty close, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And so, what agency do you work for, or did you work for, and why did you decide to get in that type of employment?
I work for the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office in Rochester, Minnesota. The way I got into this whole line of work, I've been doing this about 15 years now. Moved to Rochester with my wife and needed a job, and my father-in-law says, "Hey, I've been a cop for a long time. Let's see if we can get you working at the jail." And next thing I know, I'm working at the jail, and 15 years go by pretty quick.
Gotcha. Very good. And
Kind of
so, David, did you encounter any supreme white power types there in the jail?
We do all the time. Being Rochester, we have a large, very diverse mix of people that tend to come through there. We're on major highways. We're on I-90 here. I-35 is fairly close, so we have a lot of different people coming in and out of town. We have lodgers from the Department of Corrections that come in, and third largest city in the state of Minnesota too. So we get a lot of different types of customers coming in, to include the white power types.
Gotcha. And so during the time you've been working 15 years, are there any, oh damn moments where you thought, wow, this is a pretty tense situation. I'm not sure how to handle this or how I'm gonna get out of this? Can you recall any of those kind of incidents?
Not really too much. Try to think. Probably the first time I ever had to deal with somebody who was smearing substances all over the wall. I think you know what I mean by that. Having to go in and deal with people like that, that was a little bit different.
Now, do you think they were on drugs, or they had psychotic issues, or?
At that time, probably had some mental health issues going on, that type of thing. That, and was very angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago now, thankfully. So
yeah, a lot of people don't realize that our jails have become mental health institutions. A lot of times they've emptied the mental health facilities, and they're not on their meds, and they drink and drug, self-medicate, and then they end up getting in trouble and going to jail. So I'm very familiar with that situation. Yeah, I've had to clean up their mess. And so, what is the title of your book, David, and why did you decide to write it?
Well, the title of the book is Norse Germanic Runes and Symbols, Field Reference Guide for Law Enforcement and Corrections. I decided to write this because I went to a MGIA conference in Wisconsin in 2019, and I met some guys there, and it was after the conference. We get talking a little bit, and they're like, we got these problems. These guys are writing in runes. And at this point, I'd been doing this for quite a while. And if you do something over a period of time, you get pretty good at it. And I said, well, what do you got? And they started showing me some examples of the runic letters that they were having to try to translate and all that, and having a difficult time. And I sat down and translated out some stuff for them and told them what the origins of the lettering were, all that. And they got pretty excited about that. They're like, holy crap, nobody else knows this stuff. You need to teach a class eventually or something. And that point, I thought, well, I should just write a book on it. And that's kind of what happened.
Very good. And for our viewers that don't know what MGI is, that's for the Midwest Gang Investigators Association, and they hold trainings and conferences. I'm very familiar with that group and communicate with them often. And that's a special, skill set, David, that you have there. Ancient European cultures and religions and writing. Not too many people know about that, but yes, I'm very familiar that the Aryans, Aryan Brotherhood, and subsequent organizations similar to them that are all over the United States all like to use those as codes, and they put them on as tattoos and drawings and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I can see where you would have, be quite the tool, resource tool for cops and corrections. And so what other types of groups have you or your agencies have you worked with besides MGIA?
I've been in contact with a few different types of places. Skinhead Intelligence Network, led by Matt Browning. Talked to Matt occasionally. Actually, I met him out in Wisconsin too. A little bit of a funny story with that is he was going through his presentation and he goes, "Hey, does anyone know what these symbols mean up here?" And I kept answering his questions and he goes, "I have to talk to you afterwards." And I guess he might have thought that I was somebody who may have infiltrated the ranks a little bit. And I was like, oh God, this great big guy's mad at me now. So ended up being a very good thing and ended up forming a good working relationship with Matt. Hopefully get to speak at the Southern Poverty Law Center coming up here in October. We'll see what happens with all that. Otherwise, East Coast Gang Investigators with Edwin Torres, exchanged some information, I've sent a few books out to a few people too. One guy over in England, Martin Linton, he's currently doing gang training online as well. So just slowly trying to spread the word about this to a number of different places.
Right. Well, those are all familiar names and in groups, and I'm sure we know quite a bit of the same people. And of course, earlier on Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians channel, we had shown the memorial for TJ Layden, our buddy TJ, who was instrumental in educating all of us on the skinhead movement and white supremacists. So, he's deeply missed. Rest in peace, TJ.
Yes.
So, David, if you were a young man today and white supremacists were trying to pressure you to join their group in jail or prison or out in the street, what kind of advice would you have for that person?
If they were trying to pressure me?
If you were a young man,
yeah. Okay.
Teenager, and white supremacists were trying to recruit you into their groups, what kind of advice would you have?
Oh boy, that would be a rough situation because in the jail setting, the correctional setting, there's very limited places to go to. I would try to get away from those guys as fast as I could. If they're trying to recruit me, if it's in jail and I'm only there for a short time, I might smile and nod and say, okay, guys, whatever, and let's try to get by. Under no means would I join them. Once you get into a group like that, it's incredibly hard to get back out. Now without,
okay, so you would try to resist and avoid them if possible, but of course, as we all know, sometimes that's not, especially in a dormitory setting, juvenile setting, maybe where there's not quite the security. Sometimes, it's not an easy thing to do, for sure. And then, of course, they could go protective custody. I had a discussion with somebody who did about 20 years, over 20 years locked up. That a lot of times they're pressured to associate with certain groups, even though they're not racist, even though they don't have any ill feelings towards other groups or people or gangs. A lot of times they feel forced to be with them because of the jail or prison politics. So it's not an easy thing, And then, of course, if they go protected custody, that may mean that they're 23-hour lockdown also, which is really
Yes.
not much different than regular segregation, other than a few more, privileges. So it's not an easy thing. I think in corrections, we have done a better job of trying to make sure that those groups aren't running our institutions and controlling the populations. But yeah, there's way to get at us, whether it's riding a kite, or making a phone call or through a relative or
Mhm.
another staff member there. There's always ways to get word to us that your safety might be in jeopardy. But we do understand too that, hey, it's not a pretty place. Jail and prison isn't. So sometimes to survive, you got to do what you got to do. So yeah, we are
Mhm.
definitely, trying to figure out better ways to deal with that. That's for sure. Now, if you were an officer, a brand new officer coming
Mhm.
out of the academy, David, and I know you've been in the business over 15 years, but trying to remember back as a new officer, some of the problems you had, and then knowing, you know, uh, the pitfalls, of the business, what kind of advice would you have for that young officer uh, going out into the units, uh, encountering these individuals that can be dangerous?
Uh, right out of the gate, firm, fair, and consistent. That's advice that holds true through corrections, no matter where you're at. That and the ability to say no. Don't let people pressure you into saying yes just because you feel like you need to accommodate them. If something doesn't feel right, go with your gut, say no. You can always say yes later on, but you can't say yes and then go say no later on. That's really hard to do.
Yeah, say no, and then go ask maybe a senior officer you could trust that's going to give you the straight scoop, or a supervisor. That's
Mhm.
that's very good advice. Yeah, they do test you, as we all know. The inmates do, and other staff too. That may not be the best type of staff. See if you'll do something. I've seen that before, and then they end up blaming the new staff member, and if something goes
Mhm.
wrong. So that's it's not a easy environment to work in, not an easy environment to do time in. It's tough I think for inmates and staff, definitely. But
Mhm.
again, I think we're making improvements in that area as far as professionalism, and like you said, firm, fair, and consistent. It was something I always
Yes.
taught as attack officer out the academy. I think that will never go away. Um, so now this might be a little bit tougher question, David.
Okay.
If you were a politician, knowing what you know about what goes on in the inside, about gangs, not
Mhm.
just white supremacists, but all gangs and inmates, and what's working in the corrections system and what's not working, what kind of advice would you give to that politician as far as changes in policy or laws?
We really need to take a look at how we're reintegrating people with society. Once they've been in prison, all of a sudden their job window, for instance, will go from this down to that. A lot of places have rules in place, will not hire felons. Short of starting your own business or finding a felon-friendly business, can be really hard for a guy to make a go of it once he gets out of prison. We'd have to find a better way, I think, of just reintegrating people, whether it's halfway houses or job programs, education. I think we could really do a better job of trying to help people along with that who actually want to rehabilitate, get out and do better. And I think there are a lot of people that actually do want to get out and do better, but they just don't have the choices available to them. I think that's something we'd really need to take a look at, because people can say, well, they're criminals, we're not giving them anything. But here's the thing, those guys could end up being your neighbor someday. What kind of neighbor do you want?
Right. And contrary to public opinion, uh, by many people, most of these guys are getting out one day. And you're right. If we don't
Mm-hmm.
show them different ways, give them life skills, give them a job skill, when they come out, it's not a mystery why so many return to custody when they are not getting the help they need. And I think there's very limited funds, and probably those that don't want to change, we probably shouldn't waste too much time or money on those. But we have a lot of people that do want to change, and they just aren't getting the help, the assistance. So I agree, you know, reintegrating offenders back into society is probably where we're doing the worst job. We need to do a lot better. Most definitely want to see a change in that revolving door of corrections, we call it. And so, David, we really appreciate you telling us about your book, and where can people find that?
Oh, I'll go ahead. You can find it on Amazon. I'll go ahead and share my screen for a second here. Oh, never mind. You can find it on Amazon. This will, I think everyone can see that without the glare. Norse Germanic runes and symbols. You can go ahead, type that in the search field, or just type my name, DJ Schilling, and it'll pop right up for you. Price currently I have on it, $9.99. Yeah, check it out.
Well, that's a great resource. Really appreciate you doing that for us. And so, David, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close today?
Big thing is for everybody out there, stay safe and just take care of yourselves. That's the biggest thing in the world. I've discovered that recently myself, getting a little bit older and all that. I think the biggest thing that we can all do in this field is take good care of ourselves, because until we do that, we can't take care of our families very well or anything else.
Well, thank you, sir. That's good advice. Well, I wish you well. And if you're ever out here in Hawaii, look me up and I'll give you the local boy tour. Okay, David?
Oh man, that would be great. I look forward to that.
All right. That sounds good right now. All right,
Absolutely.
brother. Okay, you take care. Aloha from Hawaii.
You too, man. Take care.